everyone wants to live the vlog lifestyle where I have to eat a specific plate of food in the morning. So it's very important for people to kind of like outline what wellness could look like for them. It's not always roses and daisies. Sometimes it looks like breaking down.
So today we have here Thando, and she's going to be chatting with us on all things wellness, being a Black woman, navigating wellness, as well as the wellness culture and certain elements of it being somewhat toxic. So that's what we're going to be talking about today, but we're also just going to let the conversation flow and see where it goes. So I'll begin by reading Thandos Bio. So she says that her life philosophy is rooted in teaching. After graduating with a BSc Medical Sciences, specializing in sports, she spent several years trying to understand the human brain and how it responds to certain environments. Over time, she became more fascinated with behavioral patterns and how one can heal childhood trauma. This was the beginning of Honey, I'm Home, the podcast that she hosts, which is a safe space for those trying to navigate mental illness and life. She's since started her journey as a personal development coach with a focus on goal alignment and purpose fulfillment. Her philosophy is rooted in teaching. There's always space to learn and to become a better version of self. And this is the primary reason why she has firmly planted herself in coaching those who are seeking answers and a way out of spaces that limit their growth. So that is a comprehensive bio from Thando. How are you doing?
Wow. It's always interesting when people introduce me because I'm always doing like the introductions for my podcast. So it's always nice to just listen to people introduce me, but I'm really good. And I'm really glad to be part of this conversation. I think we've been having quite a few conversations around wellness, which I appreciate. Finally, there's a lot more knowledge, and we're bridging the knowledge gap in wellness, especially in a Black body society. So I'm really excited to have the conversation with you, and thank you for inviting me.
Of course. So let's get started with you just sharing a bit about yourself and your background.
Okay, so you did a really good job with the intro. Going to add a couple of things. I think since Honey, I'm Home was born, Amani was also born, which is something that I'm really, really proud of. And essentially, Amani is a business that was started by my co-founder and I, Ulinda, and we started it to create a safer community and a safer space for especially Black women, but we've since opened up the floor to men as well. And we're seeing a lot of pregnant women just join the platform, which is really great. And we're trying to allow people to return back to themselves through journaling, meditation, yoga, and also just finding community within the Amani community. So that's something that is a really big part of my life. But also I am a tech head. I really do love development, software engineering. So my primary goal, or rather my primary career path, is rooted in software engineering. And in my free time, I do try to create spaces, safer spaces for people like me who have, wanted to get to know how to navigate mental illness, or rather say mental wellness, and also just from transitioning from being a teenager to being an adult to now having to have your things together and just seeking for answers. Like I seek for answers almost all the time. And this community has allowed me to get the answers that I needed, but also now sharing that knowledge with other people.
Yeah, wow, that's amazing. Thank you for sharing all of that. And I resonate with you with having I'm really happy that you shared the part about like your tech work, because you're pushing your business and I follow you on social media, so I see what you share, and it's mostly about like your wellness, business, and work and stuff like that. But now you've just given us like a more comprehensive view of who you are, which is really awesome. So let's chat about, how you got into this whole wellness space. So I hear that it's a really big passion for you. And so it would be great for you to share how you got there and also what inspired you to start taking care of your own well-being.
Yeah, my wellness journey began unconsciously from a very young age. But then obviously when I was in varsity, it was something that took center in my life, because I was surrounded by a lot of different people in university, and I was trying to understand things like depression, anxiety, a lot of people always, they were the buzzwords at the time, like, oh, I'm feeling really depressed. I'm like, what do you mean you're feeling depressed? Where does this stem from? You know, so I've always been very inquisitive growing up. And so when I started varsity, there were a lot of personalities and individuals around me, and also just trying to also navigate my own personality. So I thought, like, I want to know more. I want to read more, but in knowing more, I wanted to share more. And I also wanted to find my voice, because in high school, I was very silent. I was that kid in the background, the kid who didn't want to speak to anybody. Like, I would talk to you if you spoke to me. But now I found my voice in varsity, and I said, I want to create this platform through a podcast where I can share whatever it is that I learned about mental well-being, and also about wellness, because I think wellness looks different for every single person. Like, for you today, wellness might look different to how it will look tomorrow. And what I mean by that is, like, sometimes we see it as, okay, I'm going to serve myself, going to have a bubble bath, I'm going to go for a walk, I'm going to drink a green smoothie, I'm going to do a facial, but we can't have like those conversations without creating that platform for people to understand how to show up for themselves in that time period. Sometimes it looks like going for talk therapy. Sometimes it looks like just cutting off access. Sometimes it looks like moving out of home, moving out of like environment, quitting your job, starting over. So for me, I was just really trying to understand how to best take care of myself through my university, because it was tough. There's a sound on TikTok that says, it's hell in there. And some days were really, really hectic and really tough. And so I just tried to be the person who initiated the change, and also be the person who people can come to for answers, you know? So that's how my wellness journey began. And since then, I've started branching out, like also with Amani. And now Amani has grown to what Amani is right now. We only started Amani February 2022, but the impact that Amani has had, and the people that we continuously are in contact with, and the people that come back and say, listen, I didn't know my body could do that. I could heal my body by doing certain things, like doing yoga, going to like communities where I can speak to people, friendships, and all of those things. So for me, wellness looks different for different people, even for myself. Every single day, wellness is different, but also the one main thing about wellness is the fact that it's continuous, it's a lifelong thing. And that's the same for everyone. It's continuous, it's longevity rooted in wellness. Every single thing that you do contributes towards our well-being. So that's where it started, and currently where it is, I'm still learning. It's always a learning process. But more than that, I think I'm more kinder to myself, the people around me. I'm more softer as a human being, and I'm more understanding of the different phases that I go through.
Wow. So you just shared a lot there. So let's go a little bit. So you spoke about you spoke about how, like, you know, when you were in varsity, you saw a lot of people around you having their own experiences of like mental health and stuff like that, and how for you as well, you know, university was lit, right? Like, I don't know someone who walks out of varsity and says it wasn't hectic, right? So like, did you at any point have any experiences of like having to grapple with mental health? And if so, what did that look like for you? And what are some things that you learned about yourself through that?
Yeah. I think like I came from a background where I was really sheltered. At home, I was that kid, like my parents wanted nothing that would, you know, distract me or harm me. And every time something like that happened, they would try to kind of like take that burden away from me. So all my life, I grew up as an egg. I was very protected. And so for the first time when I went to varsity and I was exposed to potentially life-threatening situations, with like coming into contact with different people who also have their own journeys, people who also have their own childhood traumas, trying to navigate life. Then for the first time, I'm battling with anxiety. Why am I becoming socially anxious around people? Why is it taking me so much longer to recover from an interaction with someone? And also, why do some days feel so dark and so heavy? And, you know, I started going for therapy because I felt like I wasn't feeling like myself. There were times where I wanted to drop out of school because school felt like it was contributing to that darkness. But in navigating that space, I think therapy really did help a lot in just giving me the tools to understand what I was going through. And essentially, those were signs of depression. But because I was able to say early on, like, I'm not feeling like myself, I'm not doing well, I need help, and reached out for help, I was get the help that I needed in that time period. But also, I think having friends really helped in dealing with those phases where I just really wasn't myself, and times where I was questioning, am I doing the right thing? Am I on the right path? Because recognize that, like, a lot of the times the reason why we grapple with our mental well-being is because we are uncertain about the future, or we're just really hyper anxious about the next day, when in essence we should be worrying about today, because like every day has its own troubles. So I really do think therapy and my friendships, and also just my willpower to just do better and be better, has really helped in allowing me to navigate grappling with my mental illness. Well, mental well-being. I think I really like putting it as mental well-being, because I think it's multifaceted. There's many layers to it, as opposed to saying I'm presenting with a mental illness. It's just that I'm grappling with my mental well-being, as opposed to I am mentally ill.
Yeah, I mean, I relate so much with what you just shared, like just on the basis of like having that personality trait of wanting the best for yourself, and that being the thing that motivated you to go to therapy. Because I had a similar experience. Like, university was hectic. Like, I would not I wouldn't go back and do especially the first 2 years of varsity. So I can really resonate with what you're saying, and about how it's so important to like get yourself out of your own space by getting somebody who can help you, even if, like, we know that therapy is really expensive and not everybody can afford it, but even if it's just getting somebody who you can trust to like hold that space for you and just help you see things from a different perspective, and just like share your experiences, because sometimes, like you said, talk therapy, just talking can help so much as well. So we're talking quite a lot about mental health right now, and as you were speaking, I just kind of was reflecting on how in wellness, there is kind of a division between mental health and physical health, whereas I believe that, health is holistic and our mental health is a critical component of our overall health. And I also believe very firmly in the mind-body connection, and that's not just like a pseudoscience, it's actual real science. And, your mental health affects your physical health and vice versa. So as the host of the Honey I'm Home podcast, and also with your own personal experiences of mental well-being, and also with, Amani, what you get to experience in the community, why do you think it's so important for us to position mental well-being as part of the overall picture of wellness?
Yeah, that is actually such an important question. And I think the reason why I said that is because I think with the new age social media right now, everyone has something to say about mental health, and everyone has a lot to say about physical health. And the reason why there's a division between those two is because we see an image of that. I will use my own social media and my explore page, right? I will open my explore page and I'll see an image of this really, really beautiful lady who has an hourglass shape, and she's drinking smoothies every day. She's exercising every day. Like, she looks really, really well. And I look at that and I think, I want that. But what am I doing consciously? I mean, subconsciously, to my mental health? I'm trying to, kind of like put this comparison between myself and where I think I should be. And that negatively impacts my mental health. And so that is, I think, the connection in relation to the things that we see, the things that we're exposed to, and the things that we feed ourselves that ultimately feed our mental health or take from it. And so I think for me, the most important thing in my journey has been to run this journey without comparison of who I am and the next person, because that does affect how I show up in the spaces physically and also mentally. But I do think I've seen such a huge improvement. I'll use the time that I'm in right now. Because it's winter, I wake up late. I don't feel like going to the gym. I don't feel like eating healthy. I don't feel like eating that salad. And so it has obviously negatively impacted my physical well-being, where I'm always fatigued. And someone had said to me, just sit in the sun for 10 minutes every morning. That's going to allow you to experience, like just lighter energy and lighter emotions that will impact your mental health and then subsequently impacting your physical health, because now you'll feel more energized and you'll feel like, okay, I can actually go to the gym. So for me, I've seen that connection between my physical well-being and my mental health. When I look good and I take care of myself and I go to the gym and I eat right and I'm surrounded by people who are good for me, it affects my mental well-being. And I remember we spoke on my podcast about the gut health axis and how the things we feed ourselves also ultimately feed our brain, which is really, really important. But it's obviously really hard. Like taking care of yourself is the hardest thing. Like people make it look so easy. That's why I'm saying like it's always important to disconnect from social media when you do log on to social media. Like even for me, I do still fall into the trap where I see someone live the life that I think I should be living, or the life that I think is worthy of the accolades, the round of applause, but you don't really know. Like people post their picture perfect posts, right? Like I know this from myself. Like I only ever post pictures that I think, oh, okay, this deserves to go on my feed. And then only on my stories, I'm like, oh, guys, I'm battling today. Like I'm battling to get out of bed. But I think that is the connection between the physical health and the mental health. And it's always important to draw the distinction between what works for your physical health that affects your mental health positively. For me, 100% has to be the gym. I think the reason why gym is so hard is because there's so many benefits to it. Like once you start going, you realize this is why everyone is saying the gym is like your medicine. Like just go to the gym, even if you just run, and you feel so good. I feel so powerful. I feel like I can walk on water after my session, and that allows me to do a lot during my day because I'm mentally fit for it.
Yeah. So there's a lot that I'm hearing from what you're saying about how wellness culture online can be a bit toxic. And like I said at the beginning in the intro, this is something that I wanted us to chat about a bit. So before I kind of like just raise the question, you also spoke about how taking care of yourself is a hard thing and people make it seem like super easy, right? They make it super easy, but at the same time, like you said, you're looking on the socials, you're looking at that thin girl looking poppin', having her green smoothie, you know what I mean? And also it makes it look complicated and it makes it look expensive and inaccessible. Right? It also makes it look like wellness is only for a certain group of people. So in your experience, or just by your observation, thought process, how do you think this wellness culture, like basically, what do you think are some elements of it that are not so good, that are actually not helping us be well? And then how do you think that that can also discourage people from the basics that they need to do to take care of themselves on a daily basis?
Yeah, I would actually like to echo what you were saying in that it does look expensive, and truly it is. I won't shy away from saying that wellness is an expensive form of taking care of yourself, your environment, and the people around you. But wellness looks different for different people, and I've said this already in the beginning, which is why it's important to establish what wellness looks like to you. Some people are better off with the usual everyday tasks that are building them up, things like if I wake up in the morning and I open my curtains and I let some sunshine in and I do my bed and I make sure I brush my teeth and I shower, that is what wellness would look like to someone who's presenting with signs of depression. Because usually if you're feeling a little bit under the weather or you are presenting with signs of depression, I don't want to say someone who is depressed, because that's obviously a different chat completely, because now we have to bring in medication. But with individuals who are slightly feeling a little bit demotivated, a little bit like out of tune with reality, the small things like opening your curtain could really change your day. And the reason why I also say that like wellness seems very expensive is because everyone wants to live the vlog lifestyle where I have to eat like a specific plate of food in the morning. I have to eat my oatmeal with like so many different toppings on top, where someone who really just needs the nutrients from oatmeal can literally do well with just it having sugar and peanut butter and milk, and that's it, So it's very important for people to kind of like outline what wellness could look like for them. It's not always roses and daisies. Sometimes it looks like breaking down. breaking down so that you release the anxieties, the fears, all of the tension in your body, going for a walk, and also being surrounded by people. And sometimes it looks like not being surrounded by people. So that's why I have such anxieties around social media and what we're feeding the younger generations, especially because now for me, I can make my own choices to say, this is what it looks like for me. But for the younger generations, I worry about my little sister who's told every single day that this is what it looks like. And you try to tell a 12-year-old that, no, this is not what it looks like, but they see it so often. Like, I also have my grievances around Instagram promoting certain content and not promoting other content. Like, we've seen luxury content just going off right now. And I wonder is it targeted at a certain group? What is the aim of it? But also Instagram is just trying to sell, the content that sells is the one that's going to do really well. So I would like to see more people post their days where they're feeling like maybe a cup of coffee will do me good today. Maybe talking to my therapist will do me well. And you were saying that like therapy is also inaccessible. I think we just don't have the knowledge around therapists who are doing it pro bono. I've shared so many resources where you could speak to somebody who isn't talk therapy. You don't even have to do talk therapy. Sometimes people can go for painting. Sometimes people pick up hobbies, and that's a form of therapy. And so there's a knowledge gap that needs to be bridged. And how we bridge that is by listening to a lot more podcasts, YouTube, and just getting into that information, like wanting to know is the first step to actually creating that wellness space for yourself.
Mm-hmm. And it's so interesting for me, like as you were speaking, I was like picking up on the words that you were using. Like you used the word anxiety, you said grievance, you said worry. And for me, that just speaks to like the weight of what is really happening, like on social media, how we are kind of like being brainwashed, indoctrinated to our detriment. And I think I'm really glad that we're talking about this, because I think it's one of those things where it's becoming so normalized, this wellness culture, that we don't even really realize that it is a making of capitalism, you know what I mean? Like so many other things, and that it's like we don't need for things to be so complicated in order for us to do basic things that make us well. Like you said, going and spending in the sun, like we get vitamin D, like
yes. I don't have to go for a vitamin D injection. I can just go sit out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like you can go to the gym or you can work out from home, and even just taking is a great form of moving your body, So I'm just glad to hear that reflected from you, and just like the level of depth that you went into as well in talking about that. So, on to the next thing. Wellness culture is also somewhat racially exclusive, right? And for the purposes of our conversation, we're going to be speaking from our perspective as Black women. And, we've referenced a couple of times how you host a community space for men and women who are Black. And so can you share to me, why you think it's so important to create spaces like that, for people who look like us, and what your experience has been navigating wellness spaces as a Black woman?
Yeah. If you look at our parents and you look at the older generation, the one thing that is common amongst a lot of them is survival. They're just trying to make it to the next day, right? And like they're hitting homes, multiple jobs so that they can keep afloat, keep the families afloat. And especially the Black women who have been doing this for a very long time, from when they were like 14, hitting households. So the last thing on their minds is for them to take a day off to rest and do yoga. And also, if you think about the spaces that they would find themselves in, it would be spaces that resemble where they are, in terms of these ladies are trying to just get by, trying to make sure that their kids can get to school, make sure when they get to school that they use that time to clean the house and then do their jobs and all those things. So it's always survival, survival, survival. So for us, Linda and myself, we say we want to bring the experience to Black women to say, and Black men to say, listen, we understand we're stressed. There's so much pressure on us, especially when you're young and your family is looking towards you for answers, the ticket out of whatever situation that they're in to the good life. But with all of that, you can't take away the fact that you need to take better care of yourself. Because if you don't do that, chances are you will not achieve the goals that you want to achieve, right? And also, you cannot isolate yourself. Like, you can only heal in a community. You can only succeed in a community. I know we've been told before and before and before that, listen, you need to do things by yourself because no one is going to come save you. And that is false. I'd like to believe that there are people around you who are willing to help you. There've been people in my life that have allowed me to be where I am right now. I would sit here all day and speak about my friends, my families, my business partners, and my coaches, and a lot of people that have really opened the space for me, right? And so we're trying to do that for the Black bodies, to say everything is, like, almost everything is against us because of your race, because of who you are, where you come from, how old you are. There's so many forces already against you, and the last thing we want is for you to carry that stress with you. So we want you to experience the safety net where you can come on Saturdays, you can experience this energy around the room where every single person is just also trying to better themselves, and you're also trying to better yourself. And the testimonies from people who have attended the yoga and breakfast sessions that we host have literally blown my mind, because now I see so many other people doing the yoga, and I see how they say, I used to have tension in my lower back, I used to have tension in my shoulders, but I don't have that anymore. I'm able to at least feel like a human being. And also, I think a lot of the things that we do are preventative measures, as opposed to now you wanting to find the cure for whatever it is, whatever ailment that you're presenting with. So wellness as well, I would like to think, is a preventative measure, as opposed to when it's your last point of call. By that time, that's when it becomes really, really expensive. So little things like decreasing your screen time, going to bed like really early, reading like a page of a book, and trying to just find your tribe really does contribute to the better human being that you become. So yeah, for us, just creating the spaces where we can say, listen, we all know the struggles we go through. We all know the things that we have to face. We all know how hard it is to, you walk into a boardroom and already you have to stand up twice as tall, and you have to speak up so boldly. So you're already fighting 9 to 5. You're standing up against yourself. You want him to be heard. But now we say, listen, here, it's yours. Whatever you want to do with this space is yours, as long as it doesn't negatively impact the space we're trying to create.
Yeah. So I'm hearing things about basically like rewriting our generational narrative, right? Like a different picture for ourselves as Black people. So important. And we are living in a space where, I mean, I can't say that, you know, people are like Black people are all lifted out of poverty, but there are more of us who have more financial access, and that provides you with access to things that previously, like, most of us would not have been able to access at all, you know? Which is a real privilege for those of us who can access that, like, you know, and yeah, just you know, creating those resources where we can look at ourselves differently and look at the possibilities for ourselves differently, as well, you know, really considering that wellness also is for me. Like, it's not just for other people, but I can also do it for myself. And as you were speaking, you were talking about, you were giving basically an example of like the different things that can be stressful, you know, like being a mom, having to take your kids to school, do all the things, right? Let's imagine that this character was like a single mom. And it reminded me of something that I learned, you know, when I was doing my coaching course, which is, it's called The Social Determinants of Health. And this other podcast that I like, Food Heaven, they speak about that as well. And it links quite well to me with what we have been speaking about how mental wellness is so important to consider as, you know, as part of overall wellness. Because if you're like super stressed, you've got so much on your plate, and you don't, because of certain social factors that may be stacked up against you that someone else may not have, and you don't have necessarily the knowledge or the resources or the ability to deal with that mental weight, that affects your health, you know. So I'm just glad for you to reflect that as well, because like I said, when you know your bread and butter is wellness, and you are in this routine of taking care of yourself, these things can seem like things that you would take for granted, but these are conversations that are important because for other people who may not be so steeped into this kind of space, these things may not be so obvious, and this is important information to be sharing with people. So just going back a little bit to our previous, we were talking quite a bit about like what wellness looks like for you and what wellness looks like for other people. So as you were speaking, you were reflecting on how what wellness looks like for you today may not look like what it was like yesterday. And so I'm curious about, how do you define wellness for yourself?
Yeah, that is very layered, because for me, I think I have a toolkit that I'd like to consider a toolkit, that I've collected so much knowledge as to how I can take care of myself today in comparison to yesterday. And obviously I use that and I implement that into my day-to-day. But what wellness looks like for me is essentially allowing myself to feel grounded. So my foundation, I always need to feel rooted, right? Because the first point of call, I know for a fact when I evaluate, am I doing well in this environment? Am I doing well in this workspace? Am I doing well in this friendship? Am I doing well in this new lifestyle routine? Am I doing well here, there, and now? If I don't feel grounded, and I know a lot of people always say you need to feel uncomfortable, you need to go outside of your comfort zone. For me, wellness is my comfort zone. Because I don't want to be stressed in my environment. And even things like you need to dream big, because like if your goals don't scare you, they're not big enough. I say no, I want to be comfortable with my goals, because if my goal scares me, I'm not going to want to achieve it, right? Because I'm going to think it's so unattainable, it's so out of reach. But if I can say, yeah, by the end of this year, I would have liked to have raised certain amounts of money, and I know it's possible, then I'm tracking behind my goal, and at the end, I can achieve that goal, as opposed to shooting so far off that I achieve nothing. And by the time that like I have to take things off now, I am so saddened and I'm so angry because I achieved absolutely nothing. But wellness for me is just being grounded and presenting with really good signs of just success in that space and that time period, because also again success will look different in different spaces. And what grounding might look like today, like for me, like I said, in this winter period, it's looking a lot like I have to sleep in for 1 more hour and then go to the gym later. In summer, it's going to look a lot like I need to be going out more, being in the sun more, being around people. And so things that refill my cup are things that make me feel well. Talking to my therapist, I'm very fortunate enough to be able to be in a position where I can have a therapist. And I'm also very fortunate enough to be in communities where I'm surrounded by people that do similar things. I am also creative, so I do sometimes experience creative blocks. And what wellness would look like in that time period would be attending events that refill my cup and things that restructure my creativity in that time period. So that's why I'm saying I have a toolbox to allow me to deal with different things in different periods of time. And also what wellness looks like in terms of my, personal development is like reading. I need to read a lot, so I'm able to converse with people, so that I'm able to understand different personalities. So it also just really, really depends on what I am trying to achieve at the time, and also where in that normal baseline I'm at. So if I deviate to the positive, then I'm trying to ground myself, because I cannot make any decisions when I'm too excited or too happy or too elated. And also when I deviate to the negative, then I know how we need to refill the cup. And how do we refill the cup? Sometimes it also really looks like just shutting down, like breaking down, crying about it for a week, and then coming back up next week and saying, okay, that happened, but now it's time, it's go time. So different things, different times, different scenarios, but the main thing is, am I grounded? Am I stressed? Is there a lot of tension in my life right now? And what do I need to do to navigate that?
Yeah. So yeah, definitely. I'm hearing like a lot of self-awareness, and like, being kind to yourself, you know what I mean? Like not making yourself do something that is not going to serve you right now, because that's not what you need in that particular season. As well as that comes in as well with flexibility, which I think is so.
I'm just also sorry. I'm just interested in knowing what wellness looks like for you.
Oh, okay. The table is beginning. Okay. So I was like, the next train of thought for me was like about how in wellness culture, diet culture, it's pretty much like you need to do the same thing every day, and that's how you get to being well, right? So as you're asking me that question, it also fits in well with what I was, thinking and going in my train of thought. That previously, when I first really got into like learning about how to take care of myself and stuff, I was very much in like the diet culture way of doing things, the wellness culture. Like you have to work out 6 times a week. If you don't work out 6 times a week, you're a failure. If you don't work out 6 times a week, you're gonna gain weight, or you're not gonna gain all the muscle that you want, right? It was always like about an external goal, and not so much about like how I felt or how I wanted to feel. And the self-awareness piece wasn't really there. Like I was growing in self-awareness because obviously when you start moving your body more and you start taking better care of your nutrition, you actually you feel the difference, right? So that's like a level of like bodily awareness that I was gaining, but that like emotional self-awareness was not developed. So what wellness looks like for me now is having that emotional self-awareness of like, and not emotion in the sense of how am I feeling today, and if I'm driven by my emotions, not in that sense, but in the sense of like just a softer introspective look into how am I doing today, what do I need today, what do I not need today. So that's what it looks like for me right now, and it's pretty like I'm so much more relaxed. I'm by nature I'm an A-type perfectionist, so I have to talk myself down from that perfectionism, and it's come a long way for me. Like I used to have self-worth issues in relation to how well I felt like I was doing, like with my wellness. And that's not what it's about, right? Like you're not supposed to feel like a bad person if you didn't go to the gym today. But I used to feel that way. And now I don't feel like that anymore. So it's just like flexibility, fluidity. What is the most important thing in my life right now? Sometimes it's not exercising. Sometimes I have bigger things to think about, So that's what it looks like for me right now. And it's been a lot of humbling myself.
And trial and error.
Exactly. So that's what it looks like for me right now. And also just like prioritizing actually living my life and enjoying my life. And if being so fixated on like the health things that I need to do, my health routine, is taking away from me actually enjoying my life, then it's like I let it take a back seat. It's very much counter to, like I said, the wellness culture, that rigid mindset way of approaching things. So as we wrap up, thank you also just for throwing that back to me. As we wrap up, my main thing that I like to talk about and that I focus on is body image and relationship with food. So can you chat to us just very briefly about what that has looked like for you, throughout your life? Have you gone through any particular moments, like key turning points? And, what were the key things that helped you, I guess, go through those moments?
Yeah, that's actually so interesting because for me, my turning point just happened to have been through my degree that I had studied in my undergrad, because I did anatomy. And so in understanding the body, it really helped me to understand myself, because I understood now the hormones that are at play. I understood that we have different structures. Some people have, we all have hip dips. Just some people's hip dips are covered, and I have hip dips, right? And so for the longest time, I was very conscious about that, because we see that hourglass image everywhere, and we see the same structure almost all the time. And with like now the BBL culture, it's always reinforcing the idea that you need to have a tiny waist. And sometimes it's not possible, because your structure, literally your bone structure, is not allowing for that. So for me, when I started understanding my body more and I started studying the human body, then I started being kinder to myself, because I'm not even in control to that extent of my own body, to that, because like I'm a woman, so there's so many hormones. I'm growing, I'm 23. I've literally just experienced now my teenage years where my hormones are fluctuating, and that became the turning point for me to say, hey, listen, what I am going to try to do is to eat a certain way throughout my cycle. So when I am in my, for example, my luteal phase, I'm going to eat different to when I'm in a different phase, because my hormones are different in that phase than they are in a different phase, you know? And that became the turning point. But I also do think following people that look like me on social media has really helped, and people who are kind of like representing or mirroring the image of me has really, really helped, because I used to have body goals. I used to be like, okay, cool, I'm tiny. Like I grew up really tiny. And when I started like picking up a lot of weight in university, then I started feeling like, oh my goodness, no, I need to go back to being tiny. But no, I'm a woman and my body is preparing for reproduction. And that's just how it is. Like I might not want to have kids, sure, but then my body is naturally gonna want me to have kids. And so just understanding the changes that I'm going through, and also just being very aware of the type of exercises that I'm doing. Like I do a lot more Pilates, a lot more yoga. There's no reason for me to be stressing my body 6 times a day. I mean, 6 times a week, trying to get back to the body that I had when I was 15. It's not attainable. So that was my turning point, just understanding myself and also following women that look like me, that do like similar exercises to me. I think just the new age of, we're trying to be soft, we're trying to be more graceful, we're trying to be more gentler and kinder to ourselves, has really also just been one of the movements that I've really just been proud of to come out of social media. Because yes, we deserve to be soft. Yes, I deserve to like sleep in. Like if I don't want to go to the gym, I need to listen to my body, and I need to say, okay, we're not going to go to the gym today, and there's no stress around it. And I've seen like my body is less stressed now. I sleep better, I move better, I feel better, my clothes like feel a lot better, because just the changes that I've made in terms of like, I'm not punishing myself with the salad because I want to be thin. No, I'm eating a salad because I want to feel good, and I feel when I eat it. So that was a turning point. Essentially just learning about the hormones, learning about myself, and also learning that, you know what, like it's okay to have hip dips. It's okay to not have a flat stomach. It's okay to have broad shoulders. Like it's really okay.
Yeah, wow. The first thing that you said that really stood out to me was I'm not in control, right? Because the internet tells us that we are in control, when in fact that's not true. And that's such a damaging message, because people can feel like literally broken because they're supposedly in control and can't look like someone who they think they should be able to look like.
Yes.
So that was
Yes.
such an important thing that you said. And whoever's watching this, I hope that they can look onto that.
Yeah, we're gonna leave here with something.
Yeah. And like as well, what you said about, you know, you're not eating a salad because you're punishing yourself. That's another thing, you know, that like you can end up eating a certain way, eating in a healthy way, but you're actually not approaching it in a healthy mindset. And that's also what do they call it? It defeats the purpose, right? Life is meant to be lived, life is meant to be enjoyed. Part of that is definitely taking care of yourself, but definitely not like punishing yourself with salads every day. And I can relate because I also used to do that. So no shade to anybody who is in a space like that. But yeah, so I'm not going to say anything more. We need to wrap up. But thank you so much just for your time and your engagement and the depth of your responses as well. I do hope that this is going to be seriously just doing the things for the people.
Yeah. We're all going, I always say this, we're all going to leave here with something. If it's anything, one line, one thing that you remember, anything that you take home, but we're all going to leave here with something, anything really. But thank you so much for your time. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Of course. Thanks, Thando.
Thank you.